To think something so small can connect you to everything that matters.
When your life and all you love
are on the line.
When every second counts in the emergency room, providing immediate access to your medical records.
Because Bob has trouble remembering all his medications.
Because I'm in love with my kids' kids.
Because now I'm looking out for both of us.
Because I have diabetes, but it doesn't have me.
Because I spend my life in the ER trying to save yours.
There is no credible cause for concern about implanting these tiny microchips under your skin.
There's been over 10 million pets in 15 years that have had this microchip without any problems.
The morph of where we're going to put that chip.
Stockbroker Roble Johnson is one of the pioneers. Today he's having a chip implanted in his arm.
Okay. Now you're going to feel a little pressure. Okay.
If ever he becomes an emergency patient, he can be instantly identified.
Yeah. How did that feel?
Fine, that's fine.
Okay, great.
Doctors think it will soon be as commonplace as vaccinations.
You're chipped. Okay. You should play that number today.
The scanner powers up. Wave it over the arm. Pulls up the unique 16-digit identification number, and through a serial port that's at the bottom of the scanner, it goes to a computer or a laptop, where immediately my picture, my driver's license information, and my relevant medical records would pop up on the screen.
Instead of GPS bracelets, convicts would be forced to have a device implanted.
Instead of ankle bracelets, sex offenders might have something like this implanted.
Parents are putting these chips in kids in Mexico, where there's a higher risk of kidnappings. The scanners are put up at airports and bus stations, so if a chipped child is there, police know.
I think it's good because it's really fast, the queues go quicker so that you don't have to spend all break queuing up for the food.
Your parents can pay online and you don't have to worry about losing your money or getting it stolen or anything.
The latest technology for identifying people at the point of sale, for identifying people when they make purchases, is actually the implantable chip that you can actually embed directly into human flesh. It's a tiny glass capsule about the size of a grain of rice. It contains an RFID computer chip.
I think that within 20 years when you get born you will get a chip.
Super sinister situation when you look away the first world funds come from. It's a super sinister situation when you're buying your food by. And it's a super sinister situation when you look away the first world funds come from. It's a super sinister situation when you're buying your food by. Money, 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 all I ever hear these days. Every song that the DJ plays, talking of a similar situation. Ain't got none and got to get some. Gotta have more than I had before. Gotta have more than the man next door. Every day I gotta make some more, some more, some more. Well, give me a break, yeah. Let me take some time out. Gotta frisk my mind down before I lose my life now. Give me a break, yeah. Let me take some time out.
You know, there is an increasing amount of support for a microchip for buying and selling. Some people are kind of saying that people are going to be forced to take it, but I think eventually people will be queuing up themselves and taking it.
I would not have a problem at all if they wanted to put a microchip in me to help out with any kind of medical security, anything. I'd be fine with it.
I saw my thing about the money and the banking. I hope in the future I can take one in my right hand.
I think it's very cool actually. It's a cool concept.
If I was to have a microchip which would benefit me on a personal level,
I wouldn't have any problems with the ramifications. Like for instance, if I had a microchip which would allow me discounts, say on like toll roads or purely financial reasons, which was exclusive for that, then I'd have no problem.
I got chipped.
My whole office is getting the chip.
I already got the chip.
I've got the chip.
We got the chip.
Now, the points that are most being used to sell the implantable microchip to people are causing a lot of fear and paranoia amongst conspiracy theorists. You know, fears like giving the government too much control.
They're trying to bring in the RF chips as a form of control to all of us human beings. If you don't do as you're told, if you don't conform to the authority, you don't conform to controls, you will have your chip turned off and you will not have anything. And if they turn that off, you can't go into shops, you won't be able to get into the doors, all electronically.
The idea of having one as a thin edge of a wedge as a way of social control and monitoring, I think that's very, very dangerous.
When I read the book with Barry Smith, it brought up for me the significance of the Antichrist and controlling of people. That's what it brought up. Second, yeah, the Antichrist. You know, you see these fictional movies and you see their implants and it controls you.
First, we take a gloomy, dissatisfied woman. We locate her brain. We insert a few nano chips. Finally, we enhance her to fit the ideal specifications. Welcome to the future.
It's a really scary prospect. I'm sorry. Really scary.
Well, I think they're worried about the wrong thing. They're panicking, like, about the wrong stuff. We've come to accept that kind of technology in the past, things like Social Security and credit cards. Those, that was always a concern there, but now people have just come to accept it. I think they'll do the same thing with microchip implants.
Personally, I feel that these fear merchants, they do their own cause a disservice. I mean, it's not some tyrant from outside that's going to control us. It's our own inner tyrant, our own greed, that's going to lead us to line up for something like a microchip.
When talk turns to the microchip implant being used for buying and selling, control or no control, I think most people would change their story.
I feel very strongly that I would say no, but when it comes to you can't travel, or maybe you can't get a job, or you can't get social services, I think that was pretty disturbing, because that's the point at which most people are going to, even if they wanted to say no, might feel forced to say yes.
Are there any conditions under which I would allow myself to be microchipped? I don't think so. So basically what you're saying is either you're in this monetary system with the microchip monetized system, or you're outside of that system, and you're asking me is what would I choose?
If you take the blue pill, the story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
Well, you know, that's a difficult question, because we all like creature comforts, you know, we all like to have a house. My biggest theory is that it's not ever going to be implemented.
I think it's very scary what you're talking about with that company, that it put it in your hand and, you know, might get to that point where you need to have that or you can't buy anything, and I think it's very, very scary. I would hope that this company, that it wouldn't get pushed to the point you were talking about, but yeah, that's all I have to say.
If it was an essential to life, which again I hope it would never be, I would put it in my body, but I would hope it never would come to that point.
Would you take the very chip? No way, no, no. Well, if I had to have one to participate within the community, well, for the well-being of my family, I might be forced to, yes. But I'm hoping it doesn't get to that.
Okay, with the Verichip, I would not take it on. I think if it got to the point where if you didn't have a Verichip in you, then you couldn't work, you couldn't earn money, you couldn't pay rent, I guess then there's not much choice but to conform and to go with it. But I don't see that would happen anytime soon, I don't think anyway.
I've noticed when it starts costing people personally, you know, i.e. that they won't be able to buy or sell, the penny drops. They go into denial, and they don't even want to face the fact that they've surrendered already. I mean, it's like they've just caved in, but they don't even want to face it. And that's really disturbing.
Yeah, the issue that concerns me the most on that is just money in general. You know, whether it's a microchip implant for buying or selling, or just plain cash, people are too dependent on it, and the vast majority of society have more faith in money than they do in God.
Yeah, there used to be a lot of talk about the mark of the beast in the churches, but it doesn't seem to be any more of that.
I'm a Church of England. My particular church have not discussed about the mark of the beast. The Church of England, I think they're more very politically correct, and they don't want to tread on people's toes.
I'm Assistant Minister of Grace Church, Dulwich. Yeah, I wouldn't have a problem with buying or selling or using money in this way. I personally don't have a problem with this idea of having a microchip put in your arm as a sort of, I don't know, credit card that you can buy and sell in clubs or go down to Sainsbury's and buy your food. No, I would not have a problem with that as a Christian. I think you can worship Jesus Christ whilst at the same time having a mark in your arm, yes.
I'm aware that some Christians would consider that a cashless society is a kind of answer to a prophetic text we find in the book of Revelation, that no one can buy or sell who does not have the mark. So it could be, well, if you don't have the right credit card or something else, a chip somewhere, you are lost. I can understand this kind of interpretation. According to our interpretation as Adventists, Seventh-day Adventists, we consider that this idea of worship is a dominant theme here in chapter 13. And when we say worship, we add a small word to explain, day of worship. This idea of selling or buying is not the main topic of chapter 13. We would consider that the Sabbath, that is Saturday, is the day of worship of the believers, the children of God, and there is another day, which is the Sunday, all right? The mark of the beast would be, okay, you go for the Sunday.
The mark of the beast is the Sunday worship. If I was given a microchip to shop and to do what I have to do with, I'll accept. It won't be the mark of the beast. The mark of the beast is when you go against God's holy day. My church has discussed the microchip. When it's given out, if it has nothing to do with the law of God, it can be received and used.
Not so many churches have taught about the mark of the beast. They actually are silent about it, and they don't really teach you about it and how to avoid it.
My particular church have not discussed about the mark of the beast.
If you want to have a congregation that's big, or you want to have people follow you, then you got to speak about prosperity. It's like, okay, God is going to raise you up, or God is going to give you this, He's going to heal you, He's going to give you this or that.
And I've been trying to show you that the Bible teaches that God wants you to be rich, that God wants you to prosper. He wants you to be abundantly supplied.
If you concentrate on prosperity and you think your life revolves around money, then you're worshiping the beast.
And when we say worship, we add a small word to explain, day of worship.
I think you can worship Jesus Christ whilst at the same time having a mark in your arm, yes.
Most of the churches, or the vast majority of the churches, are not teaching the masses or the followers, that would be followers of Christ, about the money, and that the money is a way of worshiping, is a form of worshiping the beast.
Hallelujah! Money coming to me now! Money coming on this money. Woo! 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 Get some anointing. You put something up here. Woo! Put this anointing on it. I tell you what, you put something up here. I'm putting this anointing on this money, man. Woo! 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 Hallelujah!
Club 700 has actually had Very Chip on, who have basically stated, look, this isn't the mark of the beast because it has not been mandated by government.
Yeah, it's interesting that we now have something that matches the prophecy in the Revelation about the mark of the beast. You're talking about a chip that goes inside your hand and you use it to buy or sell. Now that's ironic. It's clear that it's no longer some kind of fanciful imagination, but churches have totally lost interest all of a sudden.
Yeah. Yeah, like even trying to get an interview with a minister, you know, on the topic of Bible prophecy, is pretty near impossible these days. Yeah. You know, and I think those that do agree to, you know, to be interviewed, I reckon that they must probably get disciplined about it afterwards, because it shows them up. It shows them up that they haven't got a clue. You know, they don't really know. Yeah.
Well, is it really that clear?
Well, what do you mean by that?
Well, are we just assuming that it's the connection between the prophecy and the revelation and the microchip implant is really that clear?
Well, maybe what we could do is like go out on the street and show people, you know, the Bible passage, show people like the article about the very chip, and talk to people, you know, explain to people about the very chip and see if people see it as clearly as we do.
Yeah, why not? We've got the equipment, we've got the resources, we've got the motivation. Let's do it.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Did you pat the mic?
Have you got any spare batteries?
I think so. We've got some tapes. Excellent. All right, London, here we come. Jess, we'll give you a call when we get to town, okay? Take care. See you. Bye-bye.
See ya.
Okay. We're here in Catford in southeast London, and we're wanting to ask people directly, people from different backgrounds, about whether they're aware of this development towards the cashless society using microchip implants.
Okay. And it causes all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond,
to receive a mark in their right hand or their foreheads.
And that no man might buy or sell save he that he had the mark or the name of the beast or number of his name.
It's just a book, isn't it? I haven't got a lot of time for the Bible. To me, that's just words. Doesn't really mean anything, you know.
The Bible clearly lets us understand that the mark will be for trading, for buying, for selling. The choice will be, are we willing and ready to die for what we believe in? And if it means to die and to not accept the mark, then that is what will have to be done.
It seems to me that some people think it just makes sense to have a chip rather than be something to do with the Bible.
Sure. Can you see any link at all? With
well,
passage and
obviously,
that?
but I think it's a
Possibly.
major coincidence.
I don't think it's possible that someone 2,000 years ago could have prophesied about any scientific developments today. I don't think God has any place in science.
So what it's trying to say is that if you have that in your body, that you maybe you're showing the mark of the. It's not. I don't really believe in coincidence so much. I just disagree. For my personal opinion, I just don't think that has any relation to what the financial system is. Why they would put it into barcodes? The number, how that number has any relevance? If they did, it could be coincidental. But if there was some, I don't know, allegiance within the secret allegiance of the financial system around the world who are doing whatever to do this, I think there's a lot easier ways to do this and track our information and track what we do to do that by what we do in our cash machine or what we shop at Tesco's.
Yeah, it was really interesting seeing the various reactions, and you could see that even the people who argued against the connection, like were aware that it was like a huge coincidence, as they called it. They just didn't have any answers for it.
Yeah, I was also impressed, actually, how many people, you know, just out there on the street had a grasp, had a really good understanding of the whole concept, even though sometimes, they had no religious background at all.
Yeah.
And there are a few people I spoke to who could see that there really would be pressure on them to take this chip. A chip that the marketers and makers of it say they would never force on anybody.
Yeah, right. Should we keep watching?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there is a fine line between that. Well, I don't see the relevance in that. But I think what you're right. I know it's not your opinion. Maybe it is. I don't know. But I know that we are being tracked and we are being traced, and our information is being sold and it is being passed. But whether this has any relation to that, I don't think so. My personal belief.
There's no way I'd want to put the chip into my body if it's been said before that it's going to be part of some beast or whatever else it's going to be. So I wouldn't want to do it.
I would totally see where this would tie into the whole Revelations Antichrist thing.
But I could see definitely how people would think that a microchip could be construed as a mark of the beast.
If it comes down to that, the chip is the mark of the beast, and because of my Christian faith, I will never wear it.
The Christian faith and several other faiths have intertwined into it a mark of the beast concept, which is generally seen these days and accepted as the microchip. It's going to have a massive effect on people consciously and in their communities. There's going to be a rejection on that level alone. If I was to be cut off, I still wouldn't take the chip. I would find a community, no matter how hard it took, that didn't require that level of submission.
Yeah, what I found most interesting about watching this is that the people who could see the issues most clearly were usually not religious. They're oftentimes on the fringes of society, the kind of people that Jesus really would have associated with. And I met these street punks, these people in Utah, and I barely mentioned the implantable microchip with them. And what they said was pretty good. Maybe we can check it out Yeah, sure. Have a look.
Oh, the computer chip that they're gonna put into us.
Yeah.
Hey, you know what? I think about that one. If you read the Bible, dude, it says you cannot buy, sell, or trade without the mark of the beast. It's so easy. It's convenient. It's right there. Beep. Oh, everything's right there. Beep. And I will never ever put a chip in me or in any of my children. Oh no, that's
I don't want to be marked,
man. The people that actually have the chips and the cards, you would not believe how much that they actually waste. They're actually gonna throw away enough to us unchipped people. We can actually survive, dude, without chips.
Because money is just paper shit. It's nothing. Why would I trade paper shit that you can't use? There's no use for it. Like, you can't make it into anything. You can't grow anything with it.
This is not your property. This is property of the United States government, and this is a federal offense.
Money, 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 all I ever hear these days. Every song that the DJ plays, talking of a similar situation. Ain't got none and got to get some.
Now you can't even tell it was here. Alright? What is still here is us. Us, human beings. The people who need to take care of each other instead of taking care of yourself.
I met someone at an alternative gathering who was like an atheist, and he did much the same thing. He brought it up without me even mentioning it, as soon as I mentioned the very chip. And it still just amazes me how people who, you wouldn't even consider to be religious can see the obvious even more than the supposed experts on the Bible.
There's an interesting passage in the book of Revelations which talks about the mark that is placed on people, where nothing shall be bought or sold without this mark. I'm not a Christian. I don't even believe in God in the conventional sense of the word. However, as with all ancient texts, the Bible deserves to be looked at carefully and to see if there's anything in it that might be of interest historically. I'm hoping a time when maybe the genuine message of Jesus will come through.
Did you see that? I'm hoping for this is an atheist saying, I'm hoping for the genuine message of Jesus to come through. I mean, that is a classic.
Yeah, you can imagine Jesus going around and gathering his disciples from people like this, Yeah. They're all a bit radical in one way or another. Hardly a suit and tie amongst them.
Yeah, I think the suit and ties, they're too busy trying to change the message to something like worshipping God on Sunday.
I don't know a lot about the Mark of the Beast prophecy, and I don't know a lot about this chip thing, but from what you've told me just then, it seemed pretty similar. No, I'd never take a chip, I'd never microchip myself.
I think it's kind of interesting, like talking about people being chipped in the future. I engage with wild food. Engaging with like the natural world, wild plants, does make you wild in the sense that you want to rebel against standardization, manipulation, control, all these things, which I think people are seduced into because they're being manipulated, because the world is so complicated, it's so stressful. Using plants in that way and relating to people in that way just makes you, you will never be ripe for manipulation. You will always rebel.
I'll never be chipped voluntarily. They'll have to hold me down, they'll have to knock me out. Not taking the microchip could end up meaning that you would starve to death. I understand that.
I'm not Christian myself, and I'm not that knowledgeable about Revelations, but I know that when they talk of a mark of the beast, it's for buying and selling, and everyone in society must bear this mark to operate and function. But there needs to be some resistance to this agenda on a practical level. If it does end up that most people have got the microchip and there is a few resistors still out there, I think they will be hunted down. They'll be targeted for elimination. I think I would refuse the Verichip under all circumstances, even if there was the threat of imprisonment, the threat of death.
People from all religions know that something's wrong in these times. This is the most serious chess game that's ever been played. This game is so cunning, it is so deceptive. You can't say that this is of human origin. It is that in depth. It's the decisions that you make, and whether you succumb to the system and just say, look, the pain and the misery that I'm feeling, I'll succumb to, taking the Verichip, and so I can access food. Whereas for me, I'd rather starve and eat rocks before I took it.
That is great. It is starting to show that there are actually some individuals out there who've got some character that seems to be so lacking in today's society. The kind of character that would literally be willing to die before doing something that they know is wrong.
It seems like a lot of other people, though, have really missed the need to, count the cost.
I don't know that they have missed it, though. I mean, how many of them started backpedaling when we raised the question of what will you do when you can't buy or sell?
Yeah, the kind of people who have what it takes to refuse the mark, I think they're going to have to be, like, maybe fanatics, if I can say that, like idealists who would be ready to give up everything, change their whole entire lifestyle before they would go against their conscience.
Maybe we messed up by not giving people the next chapter in the book of Revelation to read. The one where it really hits home how seriously God views this whole concept of the mark.
Well, this guy knows what it's about. You can tell by what he's saying. But let me read it out. It says, "And the third angel followed them, saying with a loud voice, if any man worship the beast in his image, and receive his mark in his forehead or in his hand, the same shall drink of the wine of the wrath of God, which is poured out without mixture into the cup of his indignation. And he shall be tormented with fire and brimstone in the presence of the holy angels and in the presence of the Lamb."
Yeah, the Lamb in that passage is referring to Jesus. This isn't the kind of lovey-dovey stuff that most churchgoers would associate with God or Jesus, is it? But it's right there in the Bible.
Maybe people should stop telling God how to do his business. And if he says there's going to be a day when he's had enough of mankind's disrespect for him, then so be it.
Yeah. And let me read on. "And the smoke of their torment ascends up forever and ever, and they have no rest day nor night, whoever worships the beast and his image, and whoever receives the mark of his name."
Yeah, from that, it seems that accepting the mark is the point of no return for mankind. And I think we're on the verge of that point right now in human history.
Not the line in the sand, it's the line in the concrete. That is where it's drawn. I think that is where the soul is lost. It's as simple as that. It is a choice of serve the mainframe or or mammon or whatever you want to call it. But there is obviously a definitive line.
Actually, I did let that one marketing guy who I interviewed in the cafe earlier read the passage, which is probably why he fell to pieces so much. My guess is that he'd never even heard of that passage before, and he chose not to accept it, probably because it was easier to stay in denial.
I don't know. I think that's very negative. I don't like to think that these things are negative. I wouldn't want to read that paragraph then think that's a negative thing. Just to take that leap from reading a warning sign to actually taking it to factual facts that it's happening is a massive leap of... I don't know, for me I think that's a massive bit. I can see it as a warning, and there's loads of sections which, you know, this is what we experience in this time and whatever, and take heed of this, but I don't think it's that translatable to now, I don't think, for me.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that the verse about not taking the mark of the beast is followed by a verse which talks about people dying for their faith. I mean, that's what it's coming to, you know, and that's what people don't want to think about. But here, let me read it.
Here is the patience of the saints. Here are they that keep the commands of God and the faith of Jesus. And I heard a voice from heaven say to me, Write, Blessed are the dead which die in the Lord.
One of the problems that I found about most religious discussions concerning the book of Revelation is that it's all about matching up symbols and dates, or trying to convince people that your church is the one true church. It never seems to relate back to the teachings of Jesus. But when you recognize that the mark of the beast, you know, is all about buying and selling, there is an obvious link. Jesus, you know, commanded his disciples not to work for food, not to even think about where their material needs would be, you know, come from, or you know, how they'd be met. But where is there anyone today actually teaching people to obey the teachings of Jesus? You know, Jesus made it clear that the choice would be between serving God or mammon, or God and the mainframe, as that guy Greg put it earlier.
Yeah, there's a guy here in the UK who's been living like without money for more than a year now. And he's not really the religious type, but he's got it really spot on about the buying and selling. And he seems to understand that it may cost us our lives in the end.
Yeah, I've been thinking about this, and I feel like sometimes the soldiers of peace aren't as brave as the soldiers of war. And that if you see the soldiers of war going into battle, they're prepared to die for what they're doing. We all need to be a little bit braver. We all need to stand up and be counted and be heard. I think we all, myself completely included, need to be braver. I've been living for the last 12 months without money. Where we used to find security in friends and family and the greater communities we lived in, we now see security in notes and coins. When we buy and sell things, we're saying, I'm going to help you, but I want something in return. What better reason to help somebody than the fact they actually need some help? Like, do we actually always need to get something in return? Think about it. Nobody goes to your dad like, well, you know, I cooked dinner this evening, that's £5. If we all work together, share the resources, not only would it be better for the environment and would we use less resources, it's much better for us as people.
Yeah, Mark and some of his friends recently put on an alternative gathering in Bristol, which coincided with Buy Nothing Day. I think it was called the Free Economy Festival, and it was a fantastic day because everything was done for free. No money changed hands, no one was paid for what they did, and even the food itself was free because it was rescued from supermarket bins.
Yeah, they fed more than 1,000 people, and there was still food left over. So it was a really good illustration of those what those street punks that you interviewed were saying about how you could survive on what the people throw away.
Here's some footage of the gathering. So just here at the Buy Nothing Day Festival, and there's an army of volunteers, as you can see, busily prepping a 3-course meal, which is going to be served later on. So it's great to be a part of this. Most of the food that I get is from the back of supermarkets. About 90% of all the food I eat, gets found.
I'm just amazed that all this food goes to waste.
Do I live to work or do I work to live? And do I give to earn or do I earn to give? And if I do my best for society, will they care about money or will they care about me?
I think this is wonderful. It's really nice to all be under the same roof. I'm a language teacher, so I brought loads of sort of French books and dictionaries and textbooks and stuff like that that I don't need. And I found chocolate spread, so I exchanged it linguistic for chocolate spread. There you go.
My first experience arriving and finding that everything's free. I think it feels nice to yourself to have donated something that you don't need anymore and then take something that you actually need. No, this is a new experience for me, but I would happily, you know, as long as it's still healthy, it's not going to make me ill, I have no qualms about eating food that's out of date. It was much nicer than going into a shop and exchanging money.
Hello! Can I have everyone's attention for 40 seconds maybe? I know there's a wonderful clothes swap going on.
What we're doing is we're doing a clothes swap. So basically any clothes that you like them, they're good clothes but you just haven't worn them for a while. You bring them along, trade them in, like this nice jazzy waistcoat.
Yeah.
And then see if you can find anything that you like.
I think it's a fantastic way of kind of making an active decision to kind of not involve money in things. You know, you don't need money if people are prepared to share and swap. A whole new word. Swap.
Swapping.
Sounds slightly Dutch. Swap. Yeah, good. We're shopping today.
Shopping.
Yes, it's like shopping, not quite. It's just a really fun day. It's so nice to see so many kids. It's so nice to see so many people just really enjoying themselves, and also the slight bewilderment on people's faces when they're like, so I could just take this. It's like, well, yeah, it didn't cost us anything, so just take it away.
People are surprised that everything is free, but it's just proof that it can exist and it can happen.
Money's a pain in the neck. It's useless. It's like controls people, turns people into, I don't know, things that they don't want to be.
Just doing whatever is thrown at me really. I was helping with some furniture being brought in, just chopping some potatoes now, and clearing up later on, and anything that needs doing, I'm up for doing it.
I think I'm powering up the music system. Not sure how.
Certainly, I think like people's generosity of spirit is always there. Just needs to be given the space to sort of freely flow.
Ooh, shining eyes still see. Ooh, docile dreamers alone. Ooh, have it all, but the best from me. We got home, we got barracks and drums and a rich. Our voices on your throne. I got empathy, you got apathy, I got wrong. Thank you, that was fun.
Yeah, it has been a bit overwhelming, to be honest. I felt a bit emotional earlier, just like everybody giving their time for free. These guys work their arse off all day. Like, I haven't seen people get paid a lot of money work this hard, non-stop, relentlessly. There's been a couple of thousand people through the doors here today at some point, and just experiencing living without money for one day.
I do think that is a significant point.
Which point?
Well, the fact that what happened there was just for one day. I mean, people had a lot of fun. We all did. But as we've seen from the other footage, it's going to take a lot more dedication than that. I think Mark Boyle definitely could see that, but I'm not so sure that the others did. You know, it's not just going to be about giving up the things we don't need. We may one day actually be forced to lay down our lives for one another.
Yeah, I interviewed someone at that festival who was talking quite seriously about living without money. But it seemed like even in that setting, she seemed sort of somewhat cautious about what she was saying.
I'm nervous about talking about it to people because even the hippiest of hippies get like their prickles come up when you start talking about doing the job that you want to do and not having to enslave yourself for your money, because no one wants to have to do it, so everybody hates it. So when someone comes along and says you don't need to do this, you know, everyone gets like, but I do, I have to. And that tension, I think it all hangs on that tension in some ways. I mean, it compromises you're never giving totally, and you're never receiving totally when you're using money, because you're always aware of the back current of the exchange. Where when you don't use money, if you just are giving something and you're not thinking about what you're going to get back, it's a full-hearted gift. If you have to acknowledge to yourself your vulnerability, and you cannot pretend that you're not vulnerable, when you've got money, it masks over your natural insecurities, the needs that everybody has. We all pretend that we don't all share like these basic needs, and we can get away with that with money. But when there's no money, you're much more aware of how dependent on each other you are, and you're much more open in your vulnerability, which is a much more heart-centered, it's much braver, much more heart-centered way to live. Well, it's almost like a spirituality. There's that guy in the States, it is a spirituality for. Yeah.
Yeah, I actually got an interview with Swello where he lives at his cave in Utah.
He's the guy who's been living without money for 10 years, right?
Yeah, 10 years, yeah, that's right.
Dang.
This is like my home base here. Like I have a cave here. And I usually stay here in the winter time. The cave's small, so I can keep it warm in the winter pretty easily. But I also have a camp in town, and that I move around now and then. It's very temporary. Well, everything is. And often in warmer months, I travel around the country, just live wherever randomness takes me. I remember thinking, going through periods where I thought that, or I wondered why we didn't practice the teachings of Jesus. It's like he was more of an icon to be worshipped than to be followed in practice. We divide the world up among different religions and philosophies, but to me there's only two. And it doesn't matter whether you call it Christian, Hindu, Buddhist, whatever. Basically they all boil down to love or money, God and mammon. The Buddha said there are two paths, one leads to wealth, one leads to nirvana. And Jesus said one leads to mammon and one leads to God. So those are the only two religions in the world. One's spiritual and one's materialism. So there are no grounds under which I would allow myself to be microchipped.
Yeah, we interviewed a lot of people about issues relating to this. There was that guy, Andy Hamilton, in Bristol, who's a co-author of the Self-Sufficient-ish Bible. Fergus Drennan, who's a sort of famous wild forager. Greg Nicoletis, who's the founder of the We the People Will Not Be Chipped movement, who works closely with Catherine Albrecht. It's quite a few people.
I think that Swello and Mark Boyle represent the two strongest proponents of this message, though. Because I think they have their act together and they're more than just talk.
So, and what about us? Are we going to include something about us in this documentary as well?
Well, we are in the documentary right now. See that camera over there?
So how do we include what we're doing in the film?
Well, the cameras are rolling. Why don't we just talk into the cameras?
Okay, here goes. So we don't normally live in houses like this.
We don't live without money entirely, but we do live without working for money.
And as a group, some of us have been living like this for more than 20 years.
Right, we're freegans, which means we get most of our food from the back of supermarket dumpsters.
We live and travel in vehicles that run on waste vegetable oil.
Yeah, and we use solar panels to get our electricity from.
But really, we're preparing for a time where we won't be having vehicles at all and we'll be living pretty much like Swello.
We have contacts in India, Kenya, Australia, America, and here in the UK as well. And next year we hope to have a base in Argentina.
Yeah, that makes us sound huge, when in reality we're just a couple of dozen people at the moment. But we're training. We're learning how to survive just through faith in God, and we're preparing for a time when people of conscience in the world everywhere are going to have to survive without buying and selling. Some of us will die in the process, but there is a great need for us to be preparing right now.
A big part of that preparation is getting the message out to others, like we're doing with this film.
But we need to be clear that it's not all about us either. It's about people finding a faith that's bigger than money, and then linking up with others who have a similar kind of vision.
There are dark times ahead, but God wants to prepare us for it by teaching us to take the message of Jesus seriously right now, before the axe falls.
It is necessary that you take this disc out that's out in the street, make a copy, make 100 copies. It's for everyone.
Don't take the mark of the beast. 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 It's a conspiracy, that's why they're feeding us TV, CDs, video games and DVDs, so we'll believe these to be given us verity. Welcome to the edge of subliminal tyranny. They're giving you liberty to be who you wanna be, as long as you constantly slave to the economy. It's corporate thuggery, soon they'll be giving you microchipping technology. If you wanna be free, then please leave this scene. Flee your ID from the beast PC. These prophecies will release the remedy, but if you practice them you will be caught a radical enemy. Keep your energy clean and redeem peace free. We believe the greed breeds mean deeds. We sow the seeds to achieve a real peace, but we will never take the mark of the beast. Don't take the mark of the beast. Don't take the mark of the beast. In times as dark as these, please don't take the mark of the beast. Don't take the mark of the beast. Don't take the mark of the beast. In times as dark as these, please don't take the mark of the beast.
What is going on? We got a choice in store that'll count for oh so long. One chance to make it right. One path that leads to light. One path that leads to fire. Yeah. Will you stand up for truth or sell your soul for high?
What tricks this? That the barcode is 3 6s fixing it. 3 parallel lines with a 6 in it. Time to open up your eyes, get the scriptures in. The church is paralyzed, so they're missing it. When money's out of lies and no Christians in. They claim to follow Christ, but they're dissing him. They're so busy shouting praise, they ain't listening. I know the picture's grim, it's gonna get worse, but first it's a curse. It's coming upon the face of the earth. The human race will give birth to the worst person, and earth may even lurk in the church. Is that how it works? They try to insert